Bill?
Bill makes some sense to me, so. Second.
Been a first and a second to report the bill. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This bill will be recommended to the full committee for passage. Senator Pike, thank you very much. Senator Stanley, I believe you.
Morning. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee.
And this is Senate Bill 303.
Senator Stanley, you have Senate Bill 303.
I'll give you this back. Can I get the, printout of the other one? Sorry.
I couldn't print any of mine today. They weren't up on the.
So then you have one, just trust me to tell you exactly.
That's what we're counting on. That's what we're counting on.
Trust and verify, that's
I
right.
have-
We've never had trust and verify.
I
on
have
friendship.
the evidence right here in my hands.
All right, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Senator Stanley, tell us about Senate Bill 303 and what it does.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, Senate Bill 303 is a simple bill, as you can see, 20 lines deep, not even that much, but what it does is set the standard in the Commonwealth of Virginia to ensure that when we import dogs from outside of the state, that a dealer and or commercial breeder imports only those dogs that have been, quite frankly, vetted or from breeders that have not had violations of the Federal Animal Welfare Act, basically puppy mills. What we've seen even in Petland and those stories even recently is that sick puppies have been brought into the Commonwealth of Virginia. We need to remind ourselves, not only does that bring a lot of heartache to the owners of those dogs when they buy them, the children that love them, and it's also expensive care in order for some of the diseases that they have when they come in. But even more importantly, we're talking about diseases being brought in through the Commonwealth of Virginia by the importation of an animal, and those diseases can be communicable not just to another animal, but to humans as well. This simply states that here in Virginia, we put in line the same. It says we will not import dogs, we will not allow the importation of dogs from someone who has had a citation for a direct or critical violation for citations for 3 or more indirect or non-critical violations from the USDA for at least 2 years prior to the procurement of the dog, or 2 consecutive citations for no access to the facility prior to the procurement. So, and the penalty is a class 1 misdemeanor for that importation. So we're trying to, look, I'm unabashedly, as you know, Mr. Chairman, someone who believes that one, we should work towards becoming a no-kill state, but we have enough stray animals to fill every home with love. And of course, this is not against breeders, responsible breeders. It is in fact for those that are irresponsible breeders, and that is what we're seeking to stop.
Senator Stanley, could you walk me through the 2i section there, 2 consecutive citations for access to the facility prior to the procurement of the dog? Is there any time limit on that? I mean, if 10 years ago they had 2 violations like that, does that brand them for life? The other ones here, you can pretty much figure out, you got a 2-year, kind of window there. The only concern I see here is that could be a life sentence if you have those 2 kinds of violations. So is there any language that we can insert there, is my question, that would give them a chance to earn their way out of those 2 violations over a period of time that you would find appropriate?
Mr. Chairman, I would answer by saying, first and foremost, if you look at that, what we're talking about is that the breeder or the dealer is not allowing the federal access for inspection. So therefore, thank you very much. So therefore, we're talking about someone who's just saying, you're not coming in and look at my dogs or my animals. So under that scenario, I don't know if it's within a time frame is right, but what you have is someone who is flouting federal law and not allowing regulatory inspections as they are deemed to be fit and commanded upon people. For those that allow the inspections, allow the access, for those who do not have the citations, for those that are careful breeders, this bill is not for them. This bill does not prohibit them. This bill simply goes after those repeat offenders, those egregious offenders who overbreed dogs, bring them into our Commonwealth, they come in sick, they are sold sick, maybe unknown at the time, and then the owner either brings them back, puts them in a shelter, because they cannot afford the medical cost of fixing the dog, or they have to put the dog down, creating a lot of heartbreak for those families that took that dog into their life. So, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize, if you believe a limitation on years should be couched around that, then I'm not objecting.
Senator Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does this correspond to federal legislation and we're merely putting it on the Virginia books?
Mr. Chairman, I would answer the gentlelady by saying I'm not aware of a federal regulation that bans the importation of dogs. However, it parrots federal regulations in terms of citations and violations where someone is deemed to be an operator of a puppy mill.
So I guess, further question, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Bell.
can the import of dogs be regulated by a state and not the federal government? I mean, that this is an honest question on the levels of responsibilities of levels of government.
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentlelady by saying absolutely, we are importing what can be considered chattel. I would never say one of my 5 dogs is similar to a cow, except they do eat a lot and kind of hang around. But what I would say is that in the same way that USDA regulates and the state regulates those things, especially what we're looking out for is swine flu, avian flu. We have had different diseases with horses and cows, and when those things have come, we have taken action to ban importation.
I guess my question is, say somebody purchases a dog that was imported, but it could have been imported by another state because the federal laws are lax. Would that person be held liable under this? Would that person be charged with a misdemeanor? Not knowing that the dog in fact was imported, maybe by a family in North Carolina, a pet shop in North Carolina, or a dealer in North Carolina.
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentlelady by saying, when I have to take off my hat of being a politician and put on the one as a lawyer,
Which I want you to do.
any time in the Commonwealth of Virginia where you have a Class 1 misdemeanor, scienter, that is knowledge, intent, is the first factor of any criminal conduct in order to be convicted. We cannot stop people from being charged or Commonwealths from bringing cases, but the facts would have to be that that person knew that they brought into the Commonwealth of Virginia. They knew and intended to bring into the Commonwealth of Virginia a dog that violated this section. So,
Do we have that intent in here?
Mr. Chairman. Right, and that.
So they should know.
Right, and Mr. Chairman, I'd also answer the gentlelady, this is dealers and breeders, so it is a limited, it's not, Mrs. Smith who brings a dog
Right.
in from Pennsylvania.
No,
and suddenly-
fair enough, but do we have intent shall knowingly import per se?
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentlelady by saying a Class 1 misdemeanor in and of itself, an incohate crime. What we're talking about here is there is not one crime on the book, criminal law that is enforced that's on the books that is a Class 1 misdemeanor that does not carry with it scienter. So intent is always presumed. The Supreme Court of Virginia has said if there is something with, and we assess a penalty such as a Class 1 misdemeanor, which is up to 12 months in jail, $500 fine, then that is an automatic part. The difference being, Mr. Chairman, I would tell the gentlelady, is kind of similar by analogy. A speeding ticket is a general intent crime.
Right.
So you're speeding, maybe you didn't intend to speed, but because it's not a Class 1 misdemeanor, it's a general intent. So by mere fact that you're speeding, you are guilty of that offense, it's a lower class misdemeanor, or traffic citation. But if you're charged with reckless driving is a Class 1 misdemeanor. Reckless driving also requires a specific intent to drive recklessly so as to endanger life, liberty, property, or others.
Mr. Chairman, one last question.
Senator Bell.
This bill is fascinating, and I like the intent.
Thank you very
my,
much. That's
My
nice to see
questioning
effort.
is not, it's really just to understand that what we can do, what we have appropriate authority to do. It's a Section 1 bill? Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, I'd
It's
answer
not.
the gentlelady by saying it's a 3.26511.2, so it's within the code, it's not a.
It is within the code.
And I will also say, Mr. Chairman, just on that, other states like Maryland have passed even more stringent bans, and they've been successful. Thank you for your money.
Just getting back to my two little I, are you saying that the difference between the one little I and the two is that the others could be mistakes, everybody makes mistakes, what have you, you can sort of earn your way out of purgatory on that one, but that two little I is a purposeful violation that could not be construed as a mistake. You told people they couldn't come on the property, so therefore that is and you do allow them 2 consecutive. That's the trigger point, and because that is a purposeful thing, not something that could be a mistake, that it is okay not to have a time, a way of earning your pay back. That you're out of the game. That's
Mr. Chairman, lack of access one time could be a mistake, oversight, or maybe you're having a bad day. 2 in a row, there seems to be some specific intent to avoid better regulation, oversight, and ensuring that the product that they have, if you call it a product, is that of at least a minimum standards of quality that even the federal government requires.
gotcha. Any other questions from the
No,
panel?
I've been trying to ask as many possible questions as I could. I was hoping that we'd be sort of directing the department to come up with regulations, but it actually is in the code. Exactly.
We have anyone in favor of the bill? Could you please step forward and give us your name and your affiliation?
Heidi Meiser with the Virginia Federation of Humane Societies. We are strongly in support of this bill. We had right up in Fairfax County, Dreamy Puppy, and I had a piece of that on the civil side while Animal Control was prosecuting. It cost Fairfax County tens of thousands at least of dollars to follow through with that case, and that gentleman was probably judgment proof. I know I never saw my client's judgment ultimately. And it was a huge problem. Virginia was the first state to pass a puppy mill ban, and it was good at first until police found sources from Ohio, Missouri, Pennsylvania, and now those dogs are just coming right back here. So to close the loop, this is what we have to do. I would urge you to pass the bill.
Eisner?
Mr. Chairman and committee members, I'm Karen Moran with Virginia Positivity Initiative. There's over 10,000 puppy mills in the United States with 167,000 breeding dogs. We have 120 USDA inspectors to inspect them all annually. We very much support this bill. To get puppies to pet stores around the country, breeders rely on brokers and transportation companies to bring them there, and they lack regulation for breeding, housing, and transportation while they're in transport. Also, over 2 million puppies are bred in mills every year, and although some of the standards that are in place for commercial transport for puppies, they very much, again, lack the requirements. It's similar to the commercial breeders where they lack requirements, and the requirements that are there are minimally and poorly enforced and based solely on survival standards for the animal. So we support this bill.
Thank you.
Hi, Jamie Ashton with Virginia Positivity Initiative. We support the bill. There's no limit to the number of continuous hours puppies can be loaded on these trucks, and it's often box trucks, U-Hauls, and such. The transporters need only to offer food and water once every 12 hours. There's no, pulling over to a rest stop and letting the dogs out to exercise or cleaning feces or anything like that while they're in these box trucks. So you can imagine the stress and the filth and environment and exposure to germs that the dogs are in. We're asking you to support this bill because even in the event that the APHIS inspection reports do come back online or not accessible to the public and animal control, the brokers and transporters will be equally responsible for shipping them to the Commonwealth regarding their infractions. In this instance, both the breeder and the transporter and pet store can be charged with a Class 1 misdemeanor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt Benedetti, representing the people for the ethical treatment of animals, and we support this bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Chris Machine, BPAA. Well, we support Senator Stanley's efforts to bring in only responsibly raised animals. I commend you, sir, on that. I would like to point out one thing about the no access, though. That could simply be if the person was not home. We buy dogs from out of state. We personally pick them up. We've never had this issue with any of our breeders. The kennels that we deal with are not as described by the people that were before me here. But I would just like to caution that no access violation for USDA could be they simply were not home 2 times in a row.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
If you see the inspector coming and somebody's banging on the door and you hide in the back bedroom, the assumption could be that you were not home, and in fact you're avoiding the situation
Sure.
by not allowing somebody in, and that. But either way, that if somebody's hiding or if somebody legitimately wasn't at home. I mean, we could get into all kinds of evidentiary stuff here that you have to have an alibi that you were legitimately away from home, but that would start to get,
Right.
fairly strange. If I could ask Senator Stanley and the staff, is there any way to repair that and put in some kind of other than having a good excuse, or other than legitimate absence from the establishment language?
Well, I'll say two things, Mr. Chair. One, we could certainly amend the bill to have whatever time limit you want on it, but I will point out that the immediately prior code section that is current law to this one has roughly this exact same language with the 1 and 2 little i's, and that's where we drew this language from. So just pointing that out, that is current law for a slightly different code section right beforehand.
But you chose to.
Well, I tell you what, this subcommittee merely makes recommendations to the full committee. If there is a way to repair that problem to make the bill a little more solid, that's in the eye of the patron. And if that's something that you would like to fix, you're welcome to try to fix that. If not, I'm not of a mind to amend it right now for myself.
Mr. Chairman, I'm always willing to work with you on a multitude of things, so if there is a need for it, I'm certainly willing to do it. I don't want it to create an inconsistency, Mr. Chairman, with the earlier code section either. There might be a language where it's 2 consecutive, for specific non-access or something. Maybe we could put a language in there, because then that again reiterates what Senator Favola was saying about specifically you're creating no access. Now, I was out of Kroger and Mr. Cole. But usually, Mr. Chairman, from my understanding, unless it's a surprise inspection, they usually know to come.
Okay. I'm go ahead.
There's no notice when the USDA inspector comes, as far as we're aware of. They've never given any kind of notice when they actually come to show up for that inspection. Those are unannounced inspections.
So I can put in here that shut-ins should be the only ones that
It is, if I'm inclined to support the bill as is. I think it could put in a fail-safe kind of thing there. If you could look at that prior to the full committee and convey that, we can certainly present that at that time. And we do want to make sure that somebody is not harmed by something inadvertent like that because they're at the beach, or somebody else is on duty at the facility. So,
Mr. Chairman, I don't know. I've got 4 or 5 dogs. It has curtailed our vacation, but we do so and stay with them lovingly. So
there we go. All right. We've heard from everyone on the bill. Do we have a motion?
I will move that we report the bill.
Second.
As is, unless you
No,
wanted a condition
I want to leave
attached.
that up to the patron to do that before full committee, if he so chooses to do so.
Okay.
And we have a first and a second to recommend the bill for passage to the full committee. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
3-0.
Always nice
All
to
right,
see
we're on a
you.
roll.
Thank you, sir.
There you go. Senator Boysko, is she here? Okay. If I could, I would then elect.
So it's your bill and Senator
This
Stewart.
bill is my bill, so can I?
Senator Stewart.
He's by for the day. Senator Favola, can I turn the gavel over to you while I present this bill? And
Sure.
if you could
Okay.
handle the proceedings here.
Okay. Senator Marston, you're going to present Senate Bill 114.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill amends 4 sections of code related to comprehensive animal care to bring them in compliance with the Virginia Consumer Protection Act. What I do have is a proposed line amendment. In the bill that was drafted, on line 23, you will see that 4 words are stricken, and that is by a pet dealer. And that was stricken, and that would make this equally enforced for not only pet dealers, but for private shelters. And in looking at this bill and in talking to some individuals to explain the amendment, I feel that a private shelter and a pet store are two different entities. The private shelter is there to do a community service, to protect and help dogs, to find new homes for them. It is not a profit margin. It is not a consumer kind of transaction. Whereas a pet dealer, it is a consumer action. There's a profit motive involved, which is fine. This is America. We have a free enterprise system, and you should make money on animals that you are, authorized to sell. But in terms of this, I think we need to keep this to sales, where there is a profit involved and what have you. So the amendment I have is to unstrike those four words on line 23, and if the staff would.
I will move the amendment. Senator Pillion, do you need any clarification?
No, ma'am. Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The amendment passes, so we have unstruck by a pet dealer on line
Okay.
23.
The four sections that this bill deals with is pet shops posting of information about dogs, consumer remedies for receipt of diseased animals upon certification by a veterinarian, written notice of consumer remedies to be supplied by pet dealers, and written notice of consumer remedies to be supplied by boarding establishments. The misrepresentation of an animal's condition at the time of sale, trade, delivery, or other method of transfer remains a Class 3 misdemeanor under Virginia law. Ultimately, what this bill provides is that consumer remedies are available in the event of a violation of one of these four statutes that is consistent with the Virginia Consumer Protection Act. Consumers often invest thousands of dollars in the purchase of an animal, and they need to be protected against misrepresentations of the animal's condition, lack of information about the animal's condition, determination by a licensed veterinarian that an animal is unfit for sale, and violations of boarding requirements. So what this does is give, obviously, purchasers of animals, now as amended from pet stores, the protections of the Virginia Consumer Act. I don't know why that would, why everything for sale in Virginia shouldn't be part of the Consumer Protection Act, but this has somehow been excluded, and this bill puts this back into play.
Sounds like a good bill. Senator Marsden, this must have a fiscal impact because it says shall be subject to the enforcement provisions of the Virginia Consumer Protection Act. Is that your understanding?
I have a fiscal impact statement here. Senator Favola, Madam Chairman, we have no budget amendment necessary, and fiscal impact estimates are none.
Okay, so it does not have to be
So we do not have to go and have to
annotated
send this to
or
finance.
re-referred, okay. Who would like to speak in favor of this bill? And then those who would like to speak in opposition may follow. Yes, ma'am.
Again, I'm Heidi Meinzer with the Virginia Federation of Humane Societies, and as we have seen with other pieces that deal with pet shops and pet dealers and other issues, these animals will come right back to our shelters and rescues and to the public. This is about the only way sometimes to get people's attention is through treble damages and attorney's fees. This is a great step towards closing the loop on a lot of consumer protection issues, so we strongly support the bill.
Thank you, Heidi.
I'm
Yes.
Kara Moran with Virginia Positivity Initiative, and we strongly support the bill also because misrepresentation is a huge issue in Virginia with our pet stores, and I want to thank you, Senator Marsden, for adding this bill.
Thank you. Anybody wishing to speak in opposition? Okay, hearing none, the bill is before us as amended, and I will move that we report the bill as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Thank
Okay,
you.
that was
Thank you,
unanimous.
Senator Favola.
Senator Marsden.
Senator Boysko is apparently unable to be with us today. We'll deduct 4 points from her score, and that will be tallied up at the end of the session. But we'll catch her next time, along with Senator Stewart's bill and anything else that gets assigned to the committee. And if there's no other business, the committee will rise.